Do you need liability insurance to run a 3-on-3 basketball league? That's the question for today. And the quick answer is yes. Even if the facility doesn't require that you have liability insurance to rent their facility to run a 3-on-3 basketball league, it's way too big of a risk to not cover yourself. If something awful happens and you're not insured, this could have a devastating financial consequence for you. It could be a player or a spectator injury, whether it was from the actual 3-on-3 basketball game or someone just getting hurt somehow in the facility. Or if a guest were to damage the facility, do property damage to the facility, those things could, someone could sue you, and that's going to be devastating if you don't have insurance. Now, knock on wood, we've been running 3-on-3 basketball leagues since 1997. I'm going to actually knock on wood. We've never had any sort of claim against us, but I can sleep at night knowing that we've protected ourselves financially with liability insurance. I remember the first facility that required us to have liability insurance to rent their gym. Nowadays, I think it's pretty standard that that's going to be required. Even if it's not, I'd still get it. But I remember the first facility that asked us for that. I was really intimidated by getting liability insurance, and I didn't understand it really at all. And I'm still not going to say that I'm any kind of an expert on liability insurance, but I do have a really good relationship with our insurance agent now for a couple decades. And I really, he explained a lot of things to me when we first got our coverage, and he understands our business and what we need to be covered for. And so I really trust him now, whereas I don't feel like I have to understand everything about it because I've worked with him for so long that I trust him to have the right coverage for us and not have us paying for things that we don't need. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to just share a few tips. Maybe you want to jot some of these things down if you're starting this process and you're looking at getting liability insurance to cover your 3-on-3 basketball league. So here we go. I'll just give you a couple of things that I've learned over the years about this. Okay, so when you set up your first policy, now this is the way it worked for us, estimate your numbers really, really low. They're probably going to ask you, how many kids are we covering at this 3-on-3 league? How many dates are they going to be there? And you might have visions of running a 3-on-3 league that, with 70, 80, 90 teams or whatever, but don't tell your insurance people that. Tell them something like, oh, I'm expecting 10 or 12 teams, 3 players on a team, and we're going to do this one time this year on 4 dates. Okay. Now, if you have more than that, sign up. If you end up running more than one league or whatever, that policy should cover you for the 12 months for your 3-on-3 activities. And then, at least this is the way it works for my insurance, my agent will send me a document in December usually where I tell him the actual numbers of how many kids we had participate that year, all the dates that we had them, and then we use those numbers to predict what my policy is going to cost me for the next 12 months. Okay, so make sure you estimate your numbers. Give really, really low numbers because that's what they're basing the premium on, or how much you're going to have to pay. Another thing about this is, and I learned this when I was helping one of my students, is that your liability insurance money isn't 100% at risk if you get your policy set up and then for some reason your 3-on-3 league doesn't happen. You can get a prorated refund if you decide you're not going to run another 3-on-3 league for some reason. So I actually had someone I was working with who had insurance set up for his league, and then he had a job transfer and had to move before he could run his league. He didn't get all of it back, but it was like prorated, so he got almost all of it back. Go through a sports insurance program, because if you're looking at some sort of insurance market that's not for sports, they typically will add a liability exclusion that's going to exclude injuries to athletic participants during athletic activities, which is exactly what you want to be covered for. So make sure that you're actually going through a sports insurance agent or company. Now, you're going to be expected also to have your participants complete a liability waiver. So you should definitely have that process figured out, how you're going to do that, whether it's online or a paper register or a paper liability waiver. I would recommend that you have your insurance provider look at your waiver and make sure that it's solid. Also, make sure you check your concussion laws for your state. In Minnesota, some of those laws changed a few years ago, and you might have the same thing where you have to show to your liability insurance provider that you have a concussion awareness system in place. So, for example, we do need to require our refs and our site directors to do concussion training every 3 years. We also need to have our concussion policy posted on our website and posted on site at all of our 3-on-3 leagues. Now, some optional coverages that you might be offered, one of them is the abuse and molestation liability coverage. And we don't have that. We don't pay for that because we don't have coaches for our league. Definitely, if I was in charge of something where coaches were working with kids, I would probably get that coverage, but we don't. And this is just another good reason not to have coaches for your 3-on-3 basketball league, because you're going to pay more on your liability insurance for that. Another optional coverage would be a cyber liability endorsement. So when you're collecting personal information, depending on what you're using for your registration system, if you're if that information, that personal information is at risk at all, you're going to want to have some sort of cyber protection on your liability policy. But if you're using some sort of sports management registration tool, like we use Sports Engine, I'm not endorsing them, but I do know that they are PCI compliant. So if you're using something that's on the market for sports management software, I'm sure all of that stuff is PCI compliant, but you might just want to double check that to make sure that you are covered with your liability insurance on that. I'm not endorsing any certain company for sports liability insurance. Like I said, I actually use an agent that's local to me in Minnesota, but I do know some of my students in my program have used 2 online sports insurance companies. So I can at least direct you to start looking at these, and you can do some comparing and shopping around. But one of them is called K&K Insurance, and the other one is called eSports Insurance. Probably you should be looking for some sort of policy that's going to cost you less than $1,000 a year. Shop around. Now I'm going to put up a slide here just to show you what coverage we actually have, and I would again recommend that you actually speak to somebody about this, but this is what we carry. We have commercial general liability up to $2 million. We have something called general aggregate, which is $2 million. We have personal and advertising injury liability, $1 million. Each occurrence is $1 million. And again, just make sure that your general liability policy does not contain any athletic or sports participation exclusion, because obviously that's why you're getting this liability insurance. Okay, so again, I'm not pretending to be any sort of insurance expert, but I trust my insurance agent, and I thought I would just pass on to you some of the things that we've learned with covering our 3-on-3 basketball leagues with liability insurance. If you would like to learn even more from me about running your own 3-on-3 basketball league, I have a free 90-minute training where I will teach you the 7 proven steps that you're going to want to follow in order to get your own profitable 3-on-3 basketball league up and running in your community. So check out the link below to sign up for one of my training sessions, and I hope to see you inside. Bye.